Hello, buddy. All right. Happy 4th of July. Today, of course, is Friday, July the 4th, 2025. So happy 249th birthday to the United States of America. I hope everybody's having has had a good week and having a very safe and sane holiday today. Um, Remember, if for those who may already be, you know, those like on the East Coast or East Coast already, um, East Coast and Central Time Zone. Um, for those of you who are in fact setting off fireworks, I just hope that you guys are doing it safely and sanely. So, as I said, we're going to go ahead and wait a few minutes, give people a chance, as usually do. We're going to give people a chance um, to come in before we get started. Anyway, I do need to go off camera here for a moment. I'll be right back. So I'll put some music on though to entertain you guys while I'm on the camera. I'll be right back. All right, I'm back. Of course, a friendly reminder to everybody: if you haven't already, if you guys can like and share the stream, see if we can get some more friendly people to engage. It'd be appreciated. Also, if anything here that we talk about tonight grabs your attention, feel free to comment and or ask questions. I'll try to answer the question the best of my ability. Anyways, we're actually coming up on 3 minutes already, so I'm going to go ahead and start talking about what's on top of it. So I've got a couple articles I'm going to go over. One from that Park Place, the other from MeTV Tunes. So the two articles we're going to go over. First on that Park Place. So now some of you may not believe this, but South Park is still on the air, as it were, albeit there's been some reports lately that apparently the latest season is being delayed, which has caused some conversations with that the creators maybe, according to the creators, um, according to the creators, um, according to the creators, um, the delay is being caused by the, I guess, merger going on with Paramount and I don't know the other company. So we'll get into that a little bit. Apparently, though, there's some lot of friction on all sides. Also after that, we're going to take a look at Superman's history within the Super Friends canon. From that's the article that's going to be on MeTV Tunes. We'll be looking at that. Plus, of course, we'll be doing the rest of the wrap up. Get caught up on all of last night's action from TNA and Ring of Honor, as well as look ahead to tonight's SmackDown and tomorrow night's Collision. As over the next couple of weeks, of course, we do have quite a bit of stuff going on. Next weekend, of course, Ring of Honor. Next Friday, the 11th, Ring of Honor will have its Super Card of Honor event. And on Saturday, you'll have a couple of dueling. Well, you have basically two companies will be dueling each other as WWE will be putting on NXT's Great American Bash earlier in the day, and then Saturday night's main event, while AEW is doing its All-In pay-per-view. And then on Sunday, WWE will be doing its second Evolution pay-per-view, the all-women's pay-per-view, which some people are saying WWE has not really been giving it the attention that it deserves. Then, of course, we'll wrap things up with this day in each history. So, with all that being said now, again, a friendly reminder before we get started, you guys can help out by liking and sharing the stream. See if we can get some more friendly people to engage. I'd be appreciated. Also, if anything here grabs your attention, feel free to comment and or ask questions, and I will try to answer the questions to the best of my ability. So, with all that being said, let's get into the articles then. Let me go grab the first one here in regards to South Park. From that Park Place. All right, so South Park creators rip Paramount merger interference as new season is postponed, threaten legal action over studio meddling. Article published yesterday, July 3rd, written by Marvin Montanero. All right, so let's see what he has to say here. In a rare public outburst, South Park creators Trey Parker and Matt Stone have come out swinging against the network's corporate overlords, blaming the upcoming merger between Paramount Global and Skydance Media for delaying the long-awaited 27th season of their iconic anime series. Now, earlier today, I was talking to one of my neighbors who also caught the show on a couple of occasions, and I mentioned I'd be doing this story. He's all going, "That show's still on?" And I go, "Yeah." Yeah, but, South Park is much like The Simpsons, haven't been around for quite a long time. Some people have argued that maybe it's run its course in terms of the material it can use. But anyways, let's continue on with the article here. So the season premiere of South Park was initially scheduled for early July, but has now been bumped to July 23rd at 10 p.m. Eastern on Comedy Central. Now, from what I understand, originally it was supposed to happen on July 2nd, which was a couple of days ago, this past Wednesday, but I guess they pushed it back 3 weeks. That news was quietly dropped by the show's official X account Tuesday morning, followed by an explosive statement from the show's creator. So, quote, "This merger is a bleep show, and it's bleeping up South Park," unquote, Parker and Stone declared. Quote, "We are at the studio working on new episodes, and we hope the fans get to see them somehow," unquote. No, but and I know that I believe Yellow Flash and a few others have covered this, and I think one of the things that even Yellow Flash had talked about with this was that maybe they might want to look elsewhere other than Paramount to air, like on Netflix or something. That's been kind of thrown out there as an idea. The bluntness is vintage South Park, but the situation behind the scenes is anything but a joke. A 2-week delay with a lot more under the surface. Neither Comedy Central nor Paramount Global has offered a reason for the delay. But according to Parker and Stone, the issue stems directly from corporate interference tied to the looming merger between Paramount and Skydance. The deal, expected to be finalized by July 6th, which is this Sunday, will give control of Paramount Global to David Ellison's Skydance, backed by Redbird Capital and Comcast. The shakeup will install former NBC Universal Executive Director Jeff Shell as CEO of the newly merged company, a move that Parker and Stone allege is already causing chaos for their franchise. As I understand it, if South Park is one of those more irreverent comedy shows that doesn't go PC, you got this media company that's going even more. It's like it may be that the South Park and its creators are going in one direction, and Paramount Global and those around them are going in another. Yeah, this is, it may be a case where South Park may be moving soon. You never know, though. Because South Park has always been pretty irreverent, everything from the animation to the humor applied. And, some of the stuff that does go on there now is not going to appease the corporate overlords, as they call them. According to the Hollywood Reporter, the duo claims Shell and his affiliates have actively meddled in ongoing streaming negotiations for South Park, allegedly pressuring Warner Brothers Discovery and Netflix to alter their deals to favor Paramount Plus. In a legal letter shared with the outlet, the pair's company, Park County, accused Shell, Skydance, and Redbird of directing third parties to shorten license terms, reduce offer values, and give Paramount Plus an exclusive 12-month streaming window for new episodes. Quote, we hereby demand that you, Redbird and Skydance, immediately cease your interference, unquote. The letter reads, quote, if these activities continue, we will have no choice but to act to both protect our rights and discharge any obligations we may have to the public, unquote. And again, if anything here grabs your attention, feel free to comment and or ask questions. I'll try to answer the questions to the best of my ability. All right, so anyways, continuing on here. South Park caught in a corporate tug of war. While South Park has always thrived on skewering authority, this latest clash pits the creators directly against the real-life power brokers funding their studio. And the timing couldn't be worse. Season 27 is the show's first new batch of episodes in 2 years, following a string of streaming specials and a lockdown-era hiatus. Fans eager for the show's return may now be caught in the crossfire of what Parker and Stone view as a corporate land grab. It's a move that, if their accusations are accurate, is already threatening not just their timeline, but the long-term viability of their streaming deals. As of now, the show is still scheduled to air on Comedy Central, but questions linger about future streaming rights. Currently, Max holds the bulk of South Park episodes, while Paramount Plus has hosted recent exclusive specials. It's no secret that media companies are consolidating at breakneck speed. But in this case, the collision of big business and biting satire may have finally gone too far. All right, and that looks like that's the end of that article. So some interesting little back and forth there between Paramount and South Park creators there. So that's something that I guess something to keep an eye on over time. We'll see if let's see. So we got just under 3 weeks here till the premiere, unless something else happens. I guess we'll be keeping an eye out for that. So now with that, of course, with that now, of course, let's get ready to move on to the next article. I'll just put this out here. Let's move on. Get ready to move on to the next article here from MeTV Tunes. Let's see. More of a profile piece that we can go over. Alrighty then. So let me just pull that up. All right, so here we go. Superman story according to Super Friends. Need a Superman refresher before the big movie? Article published July 3rd, 2025 by MeTV staff. Of course, this is Superman's story within the Super Friends canon. I remind everybody, of course, Super Friends was a Hanna-Barbera cartoon that originally started back in 1973, produced by Hanna-Barbera. Of course, there was the first season of the hour long where you had Wendy Marvin and Wonder Dog, and the Super Friends were basically dealing with a lot of environmental issues, societal issues, all that. Then you had, of course, the all new Super Friends Hour that came out in 1977. In 1978, they came out with the Challenge of Super Friends, the first time where you had them actually dealing more with the with the villains from their comic book, their rogues, as it were. Then you had then of course you had the 1979 the world's greatest Super Friends, and you had Super Friends 1980, then Super Friends Legendary Superpower Team, and then finally that was in 1984, and then 1985 once and for all the Galactic Guardians series. So let's see, according to at least the Super Friends canon, what Superman's story was. And of course, if you haven't already, you guys can help out by liking and sharing the stream so we can get some more friendly people to engage. That'd be appreciated. Also, if anything here grabs your attention, feel free to comment and or ask questions, and I'll try to answer the questions to the best of my ability. With that being said, of course, feel free to comment and or ask questions. I'll try to answer the questions to the best of my ability. So, before you see Superman on the big screen, you can catch up with his origin story on Super Friends. Let's take a look at how Super Friends explains Superman's life story leading up to the Justice League. Beginning on Krypton. In the episode Planet Splitter, quote unquote, Marvin explains why Superman is against the destruction of other planets. Though through other planets through Superman's origin story. Superman was born as Kal-El on the planet Krypton to astrophysicists Jor-El and Lara. So, Planet Splitter, which was, of course, from the 1973 season. Destruction of Krypton. Krypton begins experiencing severe ground quakes. Jor-El tries to convince the Science Council that they need to build spaceships or space arcs to save everyone on Krypton from the impending planetary explosion. The Science Council rejects his idea, kick him off the Science Council, and order him to cease all scientific research. But it's too late. The final groundquakes have begun. Krypton is doomed. Leaving Krypton. As Krypton literally falls apart, baby Superman is placed into a rocket by his parents. Jor-El tells Lara that she can fit in the rocket too, but Lara stays behind because, according to her calculations, she would weigh down the rocket and prevent it from reaching Earth. They sacrifice themselves and send off baby Superman. As the rocket flies away, Jor-El remarks that a Kryptonian would have great strength on Earth because of its lighter gravity and energy from the sun, which explains some of Superman's powers. Now, what they explained that for a Kryptonian can somehow, I guess, by absorbing the solar energy, absorbing yellow solar energy into their body, they basically, you get the idea that Superman must be able to somehow metabolize it through absorption. You know, kind of the idea there. Discovered by the Kents. Baby Superman crash lands on Earth as Martha and Jonathan Kent are driving by. They pull over, pull the baby out of the rocket, and decide to adopt him and go to the local orphanage and to adopt him legally. Now, many of the media involving Superman, of course, from the Super Friends cartoon to even the Superman cartoon of the Filmation Superman cartoon, have all kind of talked, and even the Superman shorts that Fleischer did at the very first episode, they kind of alluded to all this. Because everybody's basically had some depiction of this in one form or another. Orphanage. The Kents try to adopt baby Superman immediately, but the orphanage insists on a proper investigation and examination of the baby. The medical examination goes poorly. The doctor's needles keep breaking because the baby's skin is like steel. Baby Superman keeps flying around the room and throwing the doctor around like a rag doll. See right there? He's got him like up over his head like that. And the nurse is going, oh my gosh. Home with the Kents. After all the hubbub, Orphanage is keen to get rid of baby Superman, so they call up the Kents and tell them they can have the baby sooner than they thought. Mr. and Mrs. Kent decide to name baby Clark after Mrs. Kent's side of the family. As it was revealed at some point during Superman's history that Martha's maiden name was Clark. So, yeah, Martha Clark Kent, her full name. So, of course, they're going to name their son Clark Kent. Super Brat. Now, there's a couple of things here. Super Brat. Quote, Secret Origins of the Super Friends, unquote, tells an annotated version of Superman origin story in Planet Splitter. But after that, we don't see Superman as a baby or child. Instead, Mr. Mixyet-Spitlick uses red kryptonite to turn Superman into a child in Uncle Uncle Mikestand. The only catch is that the red kryptonite also turned him into a huge brat, and his screaming tantrums and shake the whole city. Now imagine that. You got the powers of a Kryptonian, and you're a brat. I mean, just and if you ever watched the episode Uncle Mikestand, you know that it caused quite some havoc. That episode, Super Brat, as he was known during that episode, gave Samurai Firestorm and the Wonder Twins headaches. Quite a few headaches. While Mr. Mikestand was basically trying to take advantage of the situation to have some fun. Of course, Mr. Mikestand, voiced by the great Frank Welker, who we all know is, of course, also as Fred from Scooby-Doo. Let's see, Fred Jones from Scooby-Doo. Let's see, a number of characters on both G.I. Joe and Transformers. I mean, is Bronx in Gargoyles. Superman, at least the adult Superman, is voiced by the late great Danny Dark. All right, so growing up in Smallville. In, quote, Return of the Phantoms, unquote, we see teenage Clark Kent, going by Superboy, save a falling farm worker. Superboy is then kidnapped by villains from the Phantom Zone and is saved by a time-traveling Superman and Green Lantern. Reporter at the Daily Planet. Superman grows up and, as Clark Kent, becomes a newspaper reporter. Working there, he meets Lois Lane. Lois only appears a few times in Super Friends. Her role is not as clear as it is in other Superman stories. Basically, she's there more or less as a spot supporting character over time. She doesn't appear at all in the 1973 Super Friends series. I think in the all new Super Friends hours, I think she maybe, let's see, I don't even think she really even appears in all new Super Friends hours. I don't think it's really until the Challenge of the Super Friends episode involving the Noxium Crystal, where she first appears in a Super Friends cartoon, where she and Perry White are used as bait to drop Superman to try to save them from the Legion of Doom. Then you do have the episode in, I believe, I don't know if it was the World's Greatest Super Friends or Super Friends 1980, where basically she was somehow disguised as Lex Luthor. Oh, yes, Lex Luthor Strikes Back. That was the episode where somehow Lex Luthor made her look like him, and then there was the whole issue with that when he escaped. And then, of course, the scene they see here is Firestorm's introduction during the debut episode of Super Friends Legendary Superpowers Team. So, you know, with Lois's history in the Super Friends canon. Let's see. Clark and Lois do not have a defined relationship outside of being friends and co-workers, but it's heavily hinted she has a crush on him. Usually that's always been the case. Usually, particularly in the earlier comics, it was more she had a crush on him, wasn't until much later that they actually developed that relationship. They didn't start really even developing it until like the Silver Age, and you got books like Superman's Girlfriend Lois Lane, and we got some interesting stories out of that. In terms of what their life would be like as a dating couple. But anyways, Superman and Lois, number 10 here. Okay, I think this is actually another episode where she was involved in that I didn't necessarily remember her from, but let's see. Superman and Lois. Another gray area for Lois in Super Friends is that it's unclear if she knows that Clark is Superman. She has a close relationship with Superman. Lex Luthor kidnaps her to get to Superman several times, but she acts genuinely confused, even annoyed when there's an emergency and Clark leaves to, quote, make a phone call, unquote. Other Superman retellings have Lois either explicitly know about the secret identity or not at all. But in Super Friends, Lois appears to not know or be acting like she doesn't know to hide Superman's identity. Now, here's the thing though that you have to understand too. Super Friends was a kids' cartoon, so of course they're not going to emphasize the relationship between Superman and Lois. They're not going to really key in on any kind of romance there. The only real hint in Super Friends that you got of anybody's romantic life was Hawkman and Hawkgirl, as they would be working together, and I'm sure it was somewhat implied they were husband and wife, but even in that, they never explicitly said that the Super Friends, Hawkman and Hawkgirl, were husband and wife. It was never, implied or anything like that, stated or implied. So let's see now. So yeah, okay. So we did read. Member of the Justice League. After establishing himself as a hero, Superman co-founded the Justice League with Batman, Wonder Woman, and Aquaman. Of course, in the comics, they also as part of the founding members, aside from those three, it was also three more. I believe it was Martian Manhunter, the Flash, and Green Lantern also were involved in the founding of the original Justice League in the comics. I think you can find that. I think maybe in the Brave and the Bold 23, I believe. Super Friends does not show the origins of the Justice League, but rather shows them as an already established team that has begun training new heroes like Marvin, Wendy, and the Wonder Twins. Yeah, they kind of went basically again with it being a kids show. It was with a show, animated show that was designed for kids. Yeah, they wanted it to be more action packed. So watch Super Friends on MeTV Tunes weekdays at 3 p.m. Eastern, 2 Central, 12 noon Pacific, and 2 a.m. Eastern, 1 a.m. Central, 11 p.m. Pacific, and Saturdays at 1 p.m. Eastern, 12 noon Central, and 10 a.m. Pacific. All right, so there we go with that one. So 34 minutes, all right. So made some pretty good time there. So now we will get ready to move on ahead to the wrestling wrap up. As I said, we do have quite a bit to kind of go over. Of course, going to last night, from last night's TNA and Impact and Ring of Honor shows to tonight's SmackDown to tomorrow night's collision. So why don't we go ahead and get started with all that? And of course, a lot of this stuff is leading into the next couple of weeks. Next weekend's events, as I mentioned earlier. Supercard of Honor on Friday. WWE NXT's Great American Bash and WWE Saturday Night's Main Event on Saturday, along with AEW's All In, and then Sunday WWE Evolution, and then the following Sunday on the 20th, TNA Slammiversary. So, got quite a bit of stuff going on over the next couple of weeks here, in terms of the wrestling circles here. So let's go ahead and get into all that. All right. So first out, let's look back to last night's event. We're gonna start off with TNA Impact, and on last night's Impact, which came in the UPMC Event Center in Moon Township, Pennsylvania, aired on Access TV with Tom Hannafin and Matthew Wainwright on commentary. The opening match saw The Inspiration wrestle for the second time since their return to TNA, Cassie Lee and Jessie McKay, defeating the duo of Tessa Blanchard and Victoria Crawford. Then in a match for the TNA Knockouts World Title in a chain match, saw Masha Slamovich retain over her former MK Ultra partner, Killer Kelly. Matt Cardona fended off the challenge of Eddie Edwards, who had, of course, Alicia Edwards in his corner. In a match between the returning Jake Something and Mance Warner, that went to a no contest, with Steph DeLander on. In the main event saw Nick Nemeth of the TNA World Tag Team Champions, the Nemeth brothers, with Ryan Nemeth in his corner, defeating Zachary Wentz in a singles match. Myron Reed in his corner. So I don't know what happened to Trey Miguel. One of the matches that has been signed for TNA's anniversary is Nemeth will be defending the TNA World Tag Team Championships in a 4-way match against the Hardys, Jeff and Matt Hardy, the Rascals, Zachary Wentz and Trey Miguel, and First Class of AJ Francis and Casey Navarro. In fact, why don't we take a quick peek, see what that card looks like coming up on July 20th. Let's see what matches, and I did already mention some other kind of matches that already been set up, scheduled. But TNA Slammiversary 2025, which will be coming to the UBS Arena in Elmont, New York, airing on Thriller TV, coming up on July 20th, 2 weeks from this Sunday. Matches that have already been signed for it include Tessa Blanchard taking on former WWE NXT star Indy Hartwell in a match for the TNA Knockout World Tag Team Championship. Elegance brand of Ash and Heather by Elegance will be fending off the challenge of the Inspiration of Cassie Lee and Jessie McKay. In a match I believe was set up on last night's TNA Impact, Mustafa Ali will be taking on former WWE star Cedric Alexander, who made his TNA debut last week, in a 4-way ladder match for the TNA World Tag Team titles. It will be, as I said, the Nemeth brothers taking on the Hardys versus the Rascals versus First Class. Moose defends the TNA X Division title against the youngest in charge, Leon Slater, as Leon Slater looks to become looks to become the youngest ever TNA X Division Championship match. Another match that was recently signed in a winner-take-all type match for both the TNA Knockouts World Title, WNXT Women's Title, WNXT Women's Champion Jacy Jayne takes on TNA Knockout World Champion Masha Slamovich. And in a three-way match of the TNA World Title, Trick Williams defends against former champ Joe Hendry and Mike Santana. That's all for the TNA news. Now let's get ready to talk also a little bit about what's going on with Ring of Honor. And Ring of Honor had, of course, its Honor Club show last night. So we'll take a look at what happened all there. And, of course, they're trying to build towards their Super Card of Honor event coming up 1 week from today, from tonight. We'll talk a little bit about what's going down there with that. As on last night's Ring of Honor card that came from the Accesso Showwave Center in Kent, Washington, opening match saw Wheeler Yuta defeat Alex Zane in a one-on-one match. The Spanish Announce Project of Angelico and Serpentico defeating Ricky Gibson and Eddie Pearl. This obviously not the same Ricky Gibson who wrestled back in the 70s and early 80s, who was, of course, the brother of Robert Gibson. There's another Ricky Gibson altogether. In a Pure Rules match, in her preparation for the upcoming Women's Pure Rules title tournament, the Professor Serena Deeb defeated Becca in under 5 minutes. And in a match to determine the number one contender to the Ring of Honor World Tag Team titles, the infantry duo of Carly Bravo and Sean Dean with the rest of Shane Taylor Promotions in a corner of Trish Adora, Pure Champion Lee Moriarty and Shane Taylor, defeated the Top Flight of Dante and Darius Martin with Layla Gray in their corner. Now, with that, of course, being said, now let's take a quick peek at what's going to be going down next Friday night at Super Card of Honor, what's been signed already for that. Super Card of Honor, which will be taking place next Friday night from at Esports Stadium Arlington in Arlington, Texas. Lee Moriarty will be defending the Ring of Honor Pure title against CMLL's Blue Panther. In a match for the Ring of Honor World Tag Team titles, the Sons of Texas of Sammy Guevara and Dustin Rhodes will be taking on the Infantry's Carly Bravo and Sean Dean, who just won that number one contendership match. In a match for the Ring of Honor World title, Bandito will be defending against Konosuke Takeshita. And in a match for the Women's World title, Athena will be fending off the challenge of former AEW World Women's Champion Thunder Rosa. So those are the matches that are signed thus far for Ring of Honor for the Super Card of Honor event. So now let's go ahead and take a look ahead to tonight's what's going down on tonight's SmackDown. As, of course, WWE continues to march towards their events coming up next weekend with NXT's Great American Bash, Saturday night's main event, and Evolution. Let's see what's going down. So, in a number one contender triple threat match for the WWE Women's Tag Team title, Alexa Bliss and Charlotte Flair will be taking on B-Fab and Michin And they will also be taking on the Secret Herverse of Alba Fire and Piper Niven. My guess is, if I understand correctly, the winner of this match will be getting that title, the women's tag titles, that shot at the women's tag titles at Evolution, I believe. That's what that's my understanding of it. In an 8-man tag match, you have the Wyatt 6 members of Joe Gacy, Dexter Loomis, Eric Rowan, Uncle Howdy, taking on the 4-man team of Berto, Montez Ford, Johnny Gargano, and Chris Sabin, half of their respective tag teams. In a tag team match, Andrade and Ray Fenix take on the team known as Fraction, the former NXT tag team champions who were just recently called up to SmackDown, Axiom and Nathan Frazier. The main event will see JC Mateo and Solo Sikoa taking on Jacob Fatu and Jimmy Uso. So that's all what's going down on tonight's SmackDown. And now moving ahead to talk about what's on tap for Collision tomorrow night. On tomorrow night's Collision, as they continue to build towards the All In pay-per-view next Saturday, which will be coming from the Toyota Arena in Ontario, California, with Tony Schiavone and Nigel McGuinness on commentary. In a 3-way match, the Hurt Syndicate's Shelton Benjamin, with MVP in his corner, will be taking on one half of Jet Speed. The Jet Kevin Knight will, of course, have his tag team partner, Speedball Mike Bailey, in his corner. And Ring of Honor World Television Champion Nick Wayne, with members of the Patriarchy in his corner of Kip Sabian and Mother Wayne. In a tag team grudge match, FTR with Stokely in their corner of Dax Harwood and Cash Wheeler will be taking on the Outrunners, Turbo Floyd and Truth Magnum. In a 6-man tag match, you will see Mystico team with the conglomeration members of Hologram and former Ring of Honor World Heavyweight and World Tag Team Champion Mark Briscoe, taking on the Don Callis family members of Hechicero from CMLL and RPG Vice of Trent Beretta and Rocky Romero. Scorpio Sky makes his long-awaited return to television, to action in AEW. Haven't been gone for quite a while. I'm sure a lot of people didn't even know that he still was with the company, but he was. They just weren't using him. So Scorpio Sky, who will be accompanied to the ring by Christopher Daniels, will be taking on Max Caster, as Max Caster looks to get on the winning track after so many times of not. Willow Nightingale will be taking on Vipress in a women's match. In an 8-woman tag team match, Ring of Honor Women's World Champion Athena teams with Megan Bain, Julia Hart, and Thekla. They'll have, of course, Sky Blue and Melody Ford in their corner to take on the four women of Queen Aminata, Thunder Rosa, and Tay J of Anna J and Ty J, Anna J and Ty Mallow. In the main event, we'll see the Don Callis family's Kyle Fletcher with Lance Archer in his corner, taking on former Ring of Honor Pure Champion and TNT Champion Daniel Garcia. So that's all we got for you in terms of the wrestling wrap up. So now, with it being, of course, Friday, July the 4th, 2024, or 2025, let's take a look back at this date in each history. So let me just 2018, 1985, 1955, and 2020. All right. So first off, we're going to head back to 1955, as on this date back in 1955, there was actually a passing, as it were. Perce Pierce, an American producer, director, writer, and also voice actor, known for his work with Walt Disney Productions, passed away at the age of 55 from a heart attack in London, England. So, also, as I said, he was primarily a producer, director, and writer. But I know from what I saw here, I believe he did do at least one voice. He also provided the voice of the mole in Bambi. So, on this date, back in 1955, at the age of 55, Perce Pierce passed away from a heart attack. So now, as we move on to the next piece in each history, on this date, we move ahead to the year 1985, 40 years ago today. On this date, 40 years ago today, the NWA affiliate World Class Championship Wrestling. This was, of course, the affiliate run by the Von Erich family, Fritz Von Erich being the head of that. They held their Independence Day Star Wars on this date 40 years ago today. On this date 40 years ago today, they held their Independence Day Star Wars the day in 1985. The main event saw in a tag team match the team known as Dynamic Duo of the late Chris Hernandez and the late Gino Hernandez, or Chris Adams and Gino Hernandez, defeating the Cosmic Cowboys of the Von Erich brothers, Kerry and Kevin Von Erich. Sunshine, Jimmy Garvin's valet, defeated Jim Cornette in a singles match. Let's see. In a Chicago death match, Kerry Von Erich defeated the one-man gang by KO. In a best 2 out of 3 falls match, you saw the Fantastics of Bobby Fulton and Tommy Rogers defeat Kelly Kiniski and Rip Oliver. Rip Oliver known more for his work in the Pacific Northwest territory, but was down in Texas at this time. They won 2 falls to 0. And the show opened up with Steve Casey defeating Jack Victory, who would, of course, go on to work in ECW as well as WCW. It's one half of the tag team known as the Royal Family in WCW with Rip Morgan, and then went on to team up with guys like Steve Corino in ECW. So 40 years ago today, World Class NWA affiliate World Class Championship Wrestling held its Independence Day Star Wars on that date. So with that, moving on to the next piece of Nietzsche history, as it were, as we move ahead now to the year, let me see, what is it? Oh yeah, 2018. Move ahead to the year 2018, which of course was 7 years ago. On this date, 7 years ago today, the 290th issue of Archie Jumbo Comics Double Digest went on sale on this date back in 2018. It sold for $6.99, was 192 pages. Had a number of Archie features and a few like Archie Fred Andrews, Little Archie, just a whole stack of art. So on this date, the 290th issue in 2018, the 290th issue of Archie went on sale on this date back in the year 2018. And finally, on this, as soon as I'll find the, there it is. All right. Finally, on this date in the year 2020, over in Japan, a number of animes premiered on Japanese television. Among those included season 2 of Fire Force from David Productions, Lapis regarding lights from Yokohama Animation Laboratory. Superheroes by Project 9, and Silver Links, The Misfit of Demon King Academy. Those 4 animes premiered on Japanese television 5 years ago today, back in 2025. So with all that being said, I thank everybody for being here tonight. Hope everybody enjoyed the show. Of course, we'll be back here this Sunday with Rick Piper as my co-host. We'll be looking at comics that went on sale in June of 1940. We'll be looking at comics that went on sale from Marvel. So with that, I thank you all for being here, and I hope to see you all back here tomorrow. Bye.